sweet and sour. It all starts in the city of Incheon, South Korea, where we see a patient being transferred from the emergency room. Well, it turns out that he is our protagonist Reed's. For their part, the doctors are worried about his health. But after a while, a nurse named Da-Eun arrives at the place to calm things down, saying that he only has hepatitis B, and on the other hand, we found out that our protagonist had gotten his first job as an engineer. In the afternoon his parents go to visit him, but they only stay for a moment since they fear getting infected. A doctor with a nettle face also arrives at the place to take his temperature, and there his parents take the opportunity to retire. And for his part, Lee is very sad because it seems that not even his parents want to see him, but equally when the nurse Pepita returns, when she sees him, he is happy, since he thinks she is very beautiful. So at night, he leaves his room to get some air and finds the nurse smoking, where they begin to talk a little about life, but the Ordiva nurse appears and asks who is smoking, since it is obviously forbidden smoking in a hospital, to which she lies to him and tells him that she is our main character, that is, we all know it was her, but hey, he plays along because he clearly likes her. So the next day, she visits Lee in his room again, although this time she apologizes for what happened yesterday, but just like that, she starts eating her own food, which leaves Lee perplexed, because it's good nurse and she does it with a lot of confidence. She is also embarrassed and decides to retire. But anyway, from now on it seems that they were gaining more confidence, since he began to help her to make her guards more bearable. Since he prepared lunch for her, he left her some fruit in her room so that she could recover. At night, or even he would let her rest for a while in her room, although it seems that it became a custom. But there was a certain day, in which she told him that surely his girlfriend should be very lucky to have him, but he replied that you would never have a girlfriend, which annoyed the nurse, and she told him that she doesn't like people who think like that. Then he leaves. And for this reason, apparently she was upset and they distanced themselves. And finally the day came when our protagonist received his medical discharge, which he obviously didn't want since he wanted to spend more time with the nurse, but hey, he has to go. So that day, his parents went to look for him at the hospital, but he doesn't seem very happy to see them, and they did leave him withdrawn. And at night, we see that he meets his friends to eat, where everyone notices that he is supposedly thinner and also jokes that his affair with the nurse was surely a dream of his. Obviously it was something that bothered our protagonist, so the next day he went to the hospital to look for June, but it turns out that she was not there, although by mere luck he managed to get the first digits of her phone number. So when he got home, he started calling all the numbers that started with those 6 numbers, and after a lot of trying he was able to get in touch with her. Where she, surprised, tells him that she was not feeling well and took a few days, but well, to summarize, Lee confesses that she likes him a lot, and she, on her side, invites him if he wants to go to her house to talk, since she was alone. Obviously enthusiastic, he accepted the proposal, and let's imagine his emotion that he even stole his father's truck. Question that upon arrival, she receives him and after a while invites him to sit next to her, but after an awkward moment, Lee decides to leave due to his nervousness, although she stops him and asks if he wants to sleep with her. Yes, my friend, things that will never happen to you in life. But hey, so they slept curled up all night. And in the morning, since he reads, he's a great guy, I change the light bulb and I prepare a hearty breakfast for him myself, which surprised June as he began to cry, and to everyone's surprise, he ended up giving June a big kiss. Our protagonist. So from that moment, time went by and they both started dating, where we can see a very enamored Lee giving some other gift or even using his father's car to look for Da-Eun at work, but also to a Leo jealous of a coworker. The thing is that one day, a friend of hers gave her a vacation package to Jeju, so she invites our protagonist to that vacation. But here a big problem arises, since because of Lee's overweight, both could not buy a diver to match as a couple. It is for this reason that she ends up giving him a pair of slippers, since it was the only thing that both of them could combine, but it is then that the protagonist promises himself to lose weight for his next vacation, so they could wear a set of clothes together. Then after a few months, we see that Lee's life changed drastically, since now he was super thin and handsome, in addition to living with his girlfriend in his apartment, and above all, his boss had gotten him a much better job in a big company. But although everything was rosy, oddly enough, when she heard the news about her new job, she seemed unhappy and somewhat upset because Lee had not consulted with her. But hey, anyway, the protagonist decided to buy a car so he could go pick up his girlfriend at work and at the same time travel from Incheon to his job in Seoul. As long as Jun's life is not changed, even as it is, Tan Keipo gave her a ring that she wanted so much. And after a few days, he went very happy to his new job, but it turns out that there was also another person for his position, whose name is Yang, so the one who performs best will remain in the position. Yang obviously sees him as a threat, that's why he looks at him threateningly and even takes advantage of his nobility, like when Lee wanted to give coffee to her co-workers but she pretended it was her who bought them. If terrible snake. So from then on, Yang started to embarrass Lee whenever he could. For his part, the protagonist did not understand why she was like that with him, so he decided to follow his game and want to take revenge for his contempt. For this reason, in a conference to present the structure of a bridge, to summarize, Lee took advantage of saying that the model that Yang had made was wrong. It is for this reason that the boss of both decides that the two work together on that project to see who was more prominent. And as we suppose, Lee ends up making life impossible for him to complete his revenge. So when he goes home, he notices that Yang decides to stay at work, and the next day when he returns, he sees her at her job basically a mess since she hadn't even returned home and stayed working late. So I was all messy all day, and then at night, finishing the work day, they suddenly cut the lights. And Lee doesn't understand why she's so disgusting and doesn't come home to rest and clean up. Then she tells him that everything is to finish the bridge, that the main reason that she is like this is because of him. This is why, seeing her so worried, our protagonist decides to stay with her and help her, so the next morning, her boss finally did the bridge test and passed with her. To which I congratulate both of them and suggested that they continue on that path. So at night, the company held a meeting, where to summarize the area manager congratulated them both, and gave them the consent to prepare for the next bridge project, implying that they are almost inside the company. The same after a while, Lee decides to leave and take Yang with him because he had already had too many drinks and began to say strange things to his superior. But hey, leaving alcohol and partying aside, the next day, his superior decides that from now on both of them are going to be in charge of the next projects, so yes, they are going to have to work together. For his part, Yang thanks Lee for his help and above all tells him that he likes working with him, which Lee basically doesn't care about. But well, in the end we see that the days went by and while they both work they began to get along better and be closer, but this also began to affect his relationship with Da-Eun, since having a lot of work, our protagonist was not going to sleep at home. And well, it got to the point where Da-Eun seemed quite upset with this, because she obviously knew that he was left alone all those days with his new partner. Even after promising him that he would sleep at home the next day, they were able to finish the project that same day. And for her part, her boss was fascinated with the structure and even applauded and stopped to congratulate them. So with the job done, Yang decides that it's best to go celebrate, but just the two of them. So at night while they are eating, Da-Eun calls Lee on the phone, asking if she is coming home. But this time Lee lies to him and says that they are still working and that he can't come back yet. Obviously on her side, Da-Eun was very sad since she wanted to tell him something important. So when they both return to work, the power goes out again, and at that moment, Yang takes the opportunity to encourage Lee to behave badly, you know, those things that the greats do. But like any good doctor, he decides to leave quickly. So after a long trip due to traffic, he arrives home, and after not seeing Da-Eun for days, the only thing they both do is fight, but well, in short, she tells him, Lee, what she wanted to tell him. It's that she didn't get her period, that she's probably pregnant. Obviously, this shocked our protagonist. So the next day while at work, Da-Eun tells him that she went to the doctor and finally breaks the news that she is pregnant. And we can see that both are not very happy with this. So after a few days, they don't tell us where they are, but they both went to a medical center, and the movie doesn't say much, but apparently she decided to have an abortion, or well, I understood that, since when he left he hugged her tightly. So after a while they decide to go home so she can rest, and Lee just made it clear that she wouldn't go to work today, but well, apparently they started to get messages that she had to go because work is more important. So once again he left Da-Eun at night, sleeping alone in his house. I mean, he was already sad, and with that even more. Likewise, as the days went by, the protagonist no longer continued to sleep in the office, because he felt that his partner was much more important, so he began to return home every night. But we can notice that the fatigue of the trip and the traffic began to affect him, and right then he understood the other drivers who were next to him on the road. And well, every once in a while he fell asleep in the car. And for his part, Yang seemed to get annoyed every time he left because in addition to having to finish the job, he also liked his company. Question that one day, due to how tired he was, he fell asleep and for this reason he arrived late for work and obviously his superior scolded him and warned him that it was the last time. But hey, apparently he was still so tired that he fell asleep at work. So when it's time to leave, Yang stops him and sits on top of him, telling him that he can't leave today, adding that they are slow with the project. So because of this, Lee decides to stay a few days at work, and the further she got away from Da-Eun, the closer she got to Yang. And finally, once the project is finished, he decides to return home, where his partner takes him for a walk, since he supposedly wanted to buy some things, although in reality he just wanted to spend time alone with him, as they always had. But apparently Lee is so tired that he doesn't pay much attention to her, he even leaves her behind so they can go home quickly to rest. Then once in the car, Da-Eun asks her if she's tired of being with her, so she starts crying. For her part, Lee tells her that this is not the case and tries to comfort her, but ends up telling her not to cry even though she calls her my pretty Bo-Yeong, that is her partner's name. Obviously Da-Eun is dismayed and stares at him for a long time along the way. So when they stop to eat, she asks him who Yang is, to which he tells her his co-worker. Then they both start arguing since Lee thinks that she is mistrusting him. And ultimately, everything ends up going to shit, because in addition to thinking that he is cheating on him, he also tells him that he is sad for the baby he lost, because Lee did not want to have it. So like I said, everything went to shit. So the days went by and Lee seemed quite focused on work, so as not to be bad and think about his breakup with Da-Eun, but finally he decides to leave the engagement ring he had with her and just like that, when Yang left he approaches him, breaks his mouth with a kiss, if terrible Logie you turned out to be red. But well, a question that began to be closer to his partner and even began to sleep at home. But in itself, while the days dared, everything made him remember Da-Eun, basically anything that happened near him brought back a memory of his ex-girlfriend. Although one day, a reminder of his trip to Jeju appeared in December, that is, when he was fat he had promised him that the next time they would go to Jeju he would be skinny. Question that this left him thinking, but he still left a message that he could go with whoever he wanted to Jeju on vacation or else cancel the trip, but it seemed strange to him that she had not yet changed her profile picture that she had with him. So a few days later, the company held an end-of-year meeting to thank all the employees and it turns out that at that moment, Lee and Yang are pleasantly surprised that neither of them will be permanent employees, they basically did not get their license renewed. Contracts. Obviously the protagonist was quite devastated by the news, but he still decided to go to the company's New Year's party to let off steam. It was at that time that one of the prizes was a trip to Jeju for 2 people, and without much thought, she realized the love she had for Da-Eun and when checking her contact, she had left a status that Devi Vema Jeju. So all of a sudden she ran to her office to get her engagement ring and immediately took a taxi to go to the airport. And it is then that the most revealing revelation of all occurs, because when he gets out of the car, Lee bumps into the fat man. And Da-Eun seeing him is really shocked. But hey, it turns out that they started dating 1 and 7 months ago, and while all their love blossomed, at the same time the decline began, it was all we saw, that he neglected her and that was for almost a year. But 3 months ago, the chubby patient we met at the beginning arrived who was not really called Lee, but had similar names. And well, at the time when she was pregnant and didn't know it, that's why she ate too much and slept too much. But in short, to sum it up, while Lee was flirting with his partner and neglected the love of his partner, the chubby guy ended up winning his heart and conquering Da-Eun. But hey, a matter that finally when they reveal all this to us, Da-Eun worries about his new love and directly pretends that Lee was not even in the place. Then Lee immediately leaves the hot place, while Da-Eun and the chubby Lee go to Jeju. Likewise, not everything ends there because Lee goes back to the party and starts to think about the moment when their whole relationship went to shit. Obviously he remains lamenting but Yang tells him that he won the trip to Jeju, yes the very last straw, but it is there that Lee declares his love for her and puts on her engagement ring, but she tells him that she hasn't decided yet, so she finally leaves the protagonist with all the frustration in the world. And with this the summary concludes. Moral: love your partner, do not neglect them, and above all do not disappoint them, because ultimately he or she loves you. And as always, if you like the summary, do not forget to subscribe, activate the bell, like, comment, and see you in the next people. Bye.